Prime Minister, good morning.
Good morning.
Now, what is your response to this? Are you going to look more closely at whether this indeed was a request from New Zealand First or a minister in your cabinet to silence an opposition MP?
Yes, and indeed, if a minister were involved with issuing any specific instructions, as Mark Mitchell has claimed, I would be concerned by that. What I have available to me is the statement that is being made detailing from New Zealand First perspective what's happened. I've heard obviously Mark Mitchell's side of the story. I'll be seeking clarification again and assurances from potential ministers involved that they did not issue any instructions to any MP to have that kind of conversation.
Who will you seek the clarification from?
Of course, there's an insinuation here that New Zealand First ministers have been involved. I should point out they've made a statement stating that Ms Marcroft was not under any instruction by any New Zealand First ministers. I'll seek again to get that assurance in person, but then unfortunately it becomes a matter of he said, she said.
There was an apology, though, the New Zealand First leader says, from Ms Marcroft, so is that not a concession?
The wording of the statement is Miss Marcroft apologised for the misunderstanding. Again, I can only take from, we've got two stories from each individual involved. What's important to me is whether or not any of our ministers were involved, because the point that I made yesterday, this is a provincial growth fund that should have no politics in it. The criteria is the investment at a regional level. We've already had examples of projects that have been advocated for by the past government, by past ministers, by an ex-national MP who's now a mayor. That has nothing to do with whether or not a case has merit, and I would be loath to ever see that insinuation.
Let's move to the nurses, potential for industrial action there. Are they underpaid?
Well, by default, we're having this discussion about their pay because we need to look at their pay, as we will be doing later on with police and with teachers. And it's fair to say, when I've looked back over the past few years, they've sat at around the 1% to 2% mark. But it is not for me to now enter into that negotiation. And I'm very cautious about that.
What do you reckon a nurse with a couple of years' experience gets paid?
And again, I'm very cautious about this Guyon because
I know. I'm just trying to understand the context in which you have inserted yourself into this. Well, what do you reckon a nurse with a couple of years' experience gets paid?
Around the independent panel. That's a suggestion, because nurses may indeed walk away from, choose not to. They may choose to. It's a suggestion that I've made because everyone wants to see this resolved.
What does a nurse with a couple of years' experience get paid?
I wouldn't want to make a guess at a couple of years, but I know loosely where they sit.
Yeah, it's around 50k after a couple of years, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So 2% would give you $20 a week.
Yes. And as I say, Guyon, we're suggesting the independent panel because we want to seek resolution. We want to make sure that there's an outcome here that nurses are satisfied with. I'm not at the negotiating table, but I can make suggestions around the path forward. And I think the point that I'd make is the nurses have made this is not just about pay, it's about their working conditions as well.
It's priorities, though, in the end for governments, isn't it? You've got $114 million for the America's Cup, but nurses.
Well, again, I'm not the one at the negotiating table. The issue that we have at the moment is our DHBs are in deficit and we're working very hard. So this is not a case of the government's funded the America's Cup but isn't funding health. The very conversations I'm engaged with at the moment are around how we need to fund and reinvest in health again. And we're doing that right now. The budget obviously comes out in May.
Yep, so
I'm having conversations right in the middle.
Sure.
As of yesterday, I was talking about this very issue. We've committed to reinvest in health services. I didn't realise how bad the situation was, particularly on the capital side of the ledger, but equally, just in terms of what our DHBs are operating on, we're trying to resolve that. That obviously has a knock-on effect.
For sure.
So I wouldn't want anyone for a moment to say that investment means we somehow don't acknowledge the value of those workers or the difficulties we have in our health sector. It's huge.
All right. Final little segment of this interview. The Russian expulsions. We've got, by some count, 17, 18, even 19 countries expelling over 100 Russian diplomats over the poisoning fallout. Will New Zealand follow suit and expel anyone from New Zealand?
The people who are being expelled have been undeclared, by and large, undeclared intelligence officers. We've done a check in New Zealand. We don't have Russian undeclared intelligence officers here. If we did, we would expel them.
When did you do the check?
I've had assurances again in a briefing I saw yesterday that, again, an assurance that we don't have them again. As I said, if we did, we would.
So we don't have undeclared Russian intelligence officers? Really?
No.
We don't have spies, Russian spies in New Zealand?
I'm assured by MFAT that after the checks they've done, we don't. But again, important to say, if we did, we would expel them.
Is that right? So if you found out there was anyone gathering intelligence in New Zealand for Russia, they would be expelled?
If we had an undeclared intelligence officer here, yes.
You're happy with that? Do you believe that? There's no one gathering intelligence for Russia in New Zealand. Do you believe that?
Well, I can only rely on the advice that I'm given, of course, there's a range of international interests that countries will have. Does it surprise me New Zealand's not top of their list? No,
well,
actually.
How many countries it answers my own question, how many countries in the Five Eyes? But, I mean, we are a Five Eyes partner, aren't we?
Yeah, indeed.
Would they be completely uninterested in New Zealand?
Oh, well, look, it's not for me to determine where their priorities are, but all I can tell you is from the checks we've done, we don't have those diplomats who are akin to those that are being expelled in other countries.
Interesting. Thanks very much for your time.
Thanks for yours.
Do appreciate it. That is the Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern. It's 24 minutes to